Everyone wants something. What Kurt Cobain wrote in his private journals about fame. Kurt's private journals contained repeated references to feeling used, exploited, commodified. Everyone wants something from me, he wrote multiple times. Now you will hear what those journals revealed about his relationship with money and fame. Kurt Cobain kept journals throughout his adult life. Not diaries with dated entries documenting daily events, but notebooks filled with song lyrics, sketches, rants, philosophies, and raw emotional purging. These journals weren't meant for publication. They were private spaces where Kurt processed thoughts he couldn't share publicly. After his death, Courtney Love eventually published selections from these journals into. The book revealed something the public hadn't fully understood. Behind the reluctant rock star image lived someone drowning in resentment about how fame had transformed every relationship in his life into transaction. The journals contained a recurring theme, obsessive and despairing. Everyone wanted something from Kurt, and Kurt felt helpless to refuse. The financial pressure began almost immediately after Nevermind exploded. September 1991, the album released to modest expectations. By January 1992, it had reached #1 on Billboard charts, dethroning Michael Jackson. Nirvana went from indie band playing small clubs to global phenomenon in 4 months. Kurt's bank account reflected this change dramatically. He'd been living on minimal income, sometimes borrowing money for rent. Suddenly, royalty checks arrived for amounts Kurt had never imagined possessing. But this money didn't bring freedom. It brought demands. Management wanted decisions about tours, merchandise, licensing. Record label wanted another album immediately to capitalize on momentum. Publishers wanted Kurt to sign deals for everything from songbooks to posters. Each conversation was about money Kurt could make for other people. In his journals, Kurt wrote repeatedly about feeling trapped by success. One entry from early 1992 stated, "Can't even enjoy what we built because everyone treats it like gold mine. They look at me and see dollar signs. Nobody asks how I'm doing. They ask, when's the next album? When's the next tour? When can we schedule the next interview? I'm not a person anymore. I'm a product." This sense of being commodified haunted Kurt throughout Nirvana's peak years. He understood intellectually that music industry was business, but experiencing that business reality personally, watching people calculate his monetary value in real time, created profound alienation. Kurt had made music because he loved making music. Now music had become currency, and he was the mint producing it. The requests came from everywhere. Family members who'd barely contacted Kurt during his struggling years suddenly needed help with bills, wanted loans, asked for money. Kurt helped many of them, but the pattern disturbed him deeply. He wrote in journals about feeling like ATM machine to relatives who'd shown little interest in his well-being before he became wealthy. Friends from Aberdeen appeared reconnecting after years of silence, inevitably mentioning financial problems they faced. Kurt wanted to help. His generous nature made refusing difficult, but each request reinforced the perception that people valued his bank account more than his friendship. "Nobody called when I was sleeping in my car," Kurt wrote. "But now that I have money, suddenly everyone remembers we're related or we were friends. It's so transparent it makes me sick." Management relationships became particularly fraught. Nirvana's management team, like all artist management, worked on commission. They earned percentage of everything Nirvana made. This created inherent conflict. Management's financial interest lay in maximizing Nirvana's output and commercial activity. Kurt's interest lay in making music he cared about, at pace he could sustain, without compromising artistic integrity. These interests diverged regularly. Management pushed for extensive touring because tours generated significant revenue. Kurt wanted to limit touring because it exhausted him physically and mentally. Management encouraged merchandise deals, brand partnerships, licensing opportunities. Kurt resisted most of these, viewing them as selling out. Every conversation became negotiation about money versus art. Kurt's journals documented mounting frustration with these dynamics. One entry, probably from late 1992, stated, "Meeting after meeting about maximizing revenue streams. That's what they call it. Revenue streams. Like I'm a fucking river of money and they just need to build dams in the right places. Nobody asks if I want to do something. They tell me how much money we'll make if I do it, then look disappointed when I say no. I didn't start a band to maximize revenue streams. I started a band because I had things I needed to scream about." This disconnect between Kurt's motivations and industry's motivations created constant tension. The people managing his career genuinely believed they were helping him by creating lucrative opportunities. Kurt experienced these opportunities as pressure to betray his principles for profit. The pharmaceutical industry aspect added another layer. Kurt's chronic stomach pain led to extensive medical interventions. Doctors prescribed various medications, ran numerous tests, attempted different treatments. Some medical professionals Kurt encountered seemed more interested in associating themselves with famous patient than actually solving his problems. Kurt wrote about doctors who asked for autographs, who wanted photos, who mentioned their children were Nirvana fans. "Even my doctors want something from me," Kurt noted in one journal entry. "Can't just be sick person seeking help, have to be Kurt Cobain being sick," which is apparently totally different and involves a lot more pictures and autographs. This inability to access normal medical care without celebrity complications frustrated Kurt immensely. The drug dealers represented perhaps the darkest manifestation of people wanting something from Kurt. As his substance use intensified, dealers recognized lucrative customer. They had product Kurt wanted. Kurt had money they wanted, but the transactional nature of these relationships, stripped of any pretense of friendship or care, made them almost honest in Kurt's view. At least dealers were transparent about wanting his money. They didn't pretend to care about his well-being or artistic vision. Kurt wrote about this bitter irony. "The dealers are more honest than the managers. They tell me straight up, they want my money. Everyone else pretends they care about me or my music, but really they're just dealers selling different product. At least heroin does what it promises." Record label pressure intensified after Nevermind's success. Geffen Records had signed Nirvana expecting modest alternative rock sales. Instead, they had multi-platinum global phenomenon. Label executives wanted to replicate and exceed that sex. They pushed for radio-friendly singles, for music videos, for promotional appearances. Kurt's vision for In Utero, Nirvana's follow-up album, was deliberately abrasive and uncommercial. He wanted to make an album that would alienate casual fans, that would resist commodification, that would be difficult to sell as product. The label hated this approach. They saw it as sabotaging potential profit. Meetings became confrontational. Label representatives explained how much money everyone would make if Kurt would just compromise slightly. Kurt's journals from this period show someone backed into corner fighting to maintain artistic control, while being told repeatedly he was costing everyone money. Financial advisors entered Kurt's life, hired to manage the substantial wealth he'd accumulated. These advisors meant well, attempting to create financial security through investments and planning. But Kurt found their presence alienating. "Now I have people whose job is managing my money," he wrote. "People I pay to tell me about my money. The more money I make, the more people I have to pay to manage the money I'm making by having people manage my opportunities to make more money. It's circular and insane." Kurt's punk rock ethos struggled against wealth management reality. He'd grown up poor, identified with working-class struggle, written songs criticizing corporate capitalism. Now he was wealthy, employing financial advisors, existing within the system he'd criticized. This contradiction gnawed at him. The media presented another group wanting something from Kurt. Journalists wanted interviews, profiles, quotes, access. Each interview was negotiation. What topics were acceptable? What questions were off limits? Could they photograph him? Could they come to his house? Media coverage drove record sales, so record label wanted Kurt doing extensive press. But Kurt hated interviews by this point. He felt misquoted, misrepresented, reduced to sound bites. They want me to be spokesperson for generation, Kurt wrote. I'm not anyone's spokesman. I'm just person who writes songs. But that doesn't make good article. So they invent version of me that fits whatever narrative they're selling. Then other people read that invented version and think they know me. Nobody knows me. They know product labeled Kurt Cobain. Courtney Love's perspective on people surrounding Kurt comes through in her later interviews. She described them as vampires, people feeding off Kurt's energy, talent, and resources without giving anything back. Everyone had their hand out, Courtney said years later. Everyone wanted something: money, access, reflected glory, drugs, whatever. And Kurt couldn't say no to people. He was too generous, too guilty about having money when others didn't. So people took and took and took. This dynamic particularly bothered Courtney regarding drug dealers and enablers, people who provided Kurt with substances that were harming him, justified by Kurt's money making it consensual transaction. But Courtney saw it as exploitation of someone struggling with addiction and mental health issues. The toll of constant demands showed in Kurt's journals increasingly as time progressed. Entries became darker, more paranoid, more exhausted. Can't trust anyone, one entry stated. Everyone has agenda. Everyone wants something. Can't tell who's real and who's performing. Maybe everyone's performing. Maybe I'm performing. Maybe there's no real anymore, just transactions disguised as relationships. This dissolution of authentic connection into transactional relationships represented profound loss for Kurt. He'd started making music to connect with people, to express himself, to be understood. Fame had created opposite result. He felt more isolated than ever, surrounded by people, but unable to identify genuine relationships among the extractive ones. The financial pressures extended to creative decisions. Nirvana was offered substantial sums for commercial licensing. Car companies wanted to use their songs in advertisements. Film studios wanted Nirvana music for soundtracks. Each offer came with significant payment. Management presented these opportunities as obvious decisions.
Take the money, use it for financial security, for Francis Bean's future, for whatever Kurt wanted.
But Kurt saw these decisions differently. They want me to sell songs to car commercial for $500,000, he wrote, as if the song is product and meaning doesn't matter, as if I wrote it to sell cars someday. The song meant something when I wrote it. Now it's just commodity worth whatever someone will pay. This is what success means. Everything you make becomes for sale whether you want it to be or not. Kurt's relationship with money itself was complicated. He'd grown up without it, knew what poverty felt like, understood money's importance for survival, but he also distrusted it, saw it corrupting relationships, watched it change how people treated him. His journals show someone trying to navigate this contradiction. Need money to live, to provide for family, to have security, one entry acknowledged, but money makes everything worse simultaneously. Can't separate having it from how it changes people around you. Can't enjoy security. It provides because of what you lose, getting it. This philosophical struggle about wealth under capitalism played out in Kurt's mind constantly. He couldn't reject money entirely without rejecting stability and responsibility, but accepting it meant accepting all the complications it brought. The pressure to tour illustrated these conflicts clearly. Touring generated massive revenue for everyone involved. Band members made money. Management made commission. Promoters made profit. Venues made income. Record sales increased. Merchandise sold. Everyone had financial incentive for Nirvana to tour constantly. Except Kurt. Touring exhausted him physically, worsened his stomach problems, separated him from home and family, fed his substance use, but saying no to tours meant costing everyone else money. Kurt felt this weight. "They don't say I'm costing them money directly," he wrote, "but the disappointment is obvious. The calculations happen in front of me. How much revenue we're losing by not touring. How many people are losing income because I'm too tired or sick or depressed to perform. So I do it even when I shouldn't. I do it because saying no feels selfish even though saying yes is killing me." By 1993, Kurt's journals showed someone completely overwhelmed by success's demands. The joy of making music had been extracted and replaced with obligation, transaction, and resentment. Everyone wants something. Key refrain appearing throughout entries. Family wanted money. Management wanted touring. Label wanted albums. Media wanted interviews. Fans wanted performances. Dealers wanted payments. "Nobody just wants me to be okay," Kurt wrote. "Nobody asks what I want or need. They ask what I can give them. And when I can't give it or won't give it, I'm the problem. I'm difficult or ungrateful or selfish. But they're not selfish for wanting to extract from me constantly. That's just business, apparently." The guilt Kurt felt about his situation made everything worse. He knew millions of people would trade places with him instantly. He had wealth, fame, creative freedom, platform to express himself. Complaining about success seemed ungrateful, but the complaints weren't about having success. They were about what success had cost him, the relationships it had corrupted, the authenticity it had destroyed, the constant pressure it created. "People think I'm complaining about being rich and famous," one journal entry stated. "I'm complaining about being alone in a room full of people who want things from me. I'm complaining about losing ability to trust anyone. I'm complaining about becoming product instead of person. But I can't explain that without sounding like spoiled brat. So I don't explain. I just feel it." The final months of Kurt's journal entries, before his death in April 1994, show someone who'd given up fighting against the machine. The anger and resistance present in earlier entries faded into resignation and exhaustion. "Everyone wants something and I'm too tired to say no anymore," one late entry stated. "Just give them what they want. Give everyone what they want. Maybe then they'll leave me alone." But they never leave me alone because giving them what they want just makes them want more. This exhaustion, this sense of being depleted by constant demands, permeates the final journal pages. Kurt wasn't writing about artistic struggles or creative blocks. He was writing about having nothing left to give to people who kept taking. The journals, published after his death, revealed to public what those close to Kurt had seen privately. Someone drowning in success, unable to enjoy it, unable to escape it, unable to transform it into anything resembling happiness or fulfillment. The American dream had delivered everything it promised: fame, wealth, influence, platform. And in delivering these things, it had extracted everything that made Kurt want them in the first place. The ability to make music freely without commercial pressure, authentic relationships, not based on what he could provide, privacy, peace, the simple pleasure of creating without calculating value. "Everyone wants something" wasn't paranoia. It was accurate assessment of how success had transformed every relationship in Kurt's life, into negotiation about what he could offer others. And ultimately, he had nothing left to offer, including himself.